Today we're going to do a walkthrough of our instructions. The instructions are probably the most boring part for you. However, it'll cover off all the questions you're going to have, and we still get the same questions over and over and over again. The same issues are caused by not reading the instructions. So if you're not a fan of reading, we're going to go through this. Probably take us about 20-25 minutes, but we'll cover off some of the key things, and it should answer all the questions you have as we go through. We will touch on some of the more important points, including about your fridge and the issues that people have with their fridge, understanding the fridge, and the cause of the fridge issues that they might have is not necessarily the power. In most cases, it is the fridge. So if you've got the instructions with you, that's great. If not, on our website, you can go onto our website, and our instructions are there in PDF. You can actually download them. So as you'll see on the top, it says stop, please read this here, or read this document. So you must read all the instructions, or you risk voiding your warranty if you ignore them. If you use the unit as designed, you'll have many years of reliable use. The unit has a maximum output at any given time, and this is important because people still ask me, even today, can I run a microwave, or can I run my compressor, plasma gun, induction oven, and so forth, and they're pulling 3,000 or 4,000 watts. These have a maximum of 20 amp output, which is under 300 watt. So basically, for any of your DC appliances, your fridges, those types of things, if you're out camping, that's what these are designed for. If you want to run your 240 equipment, typically what you run off your 240, high-powered tools and things like that, these are not designed for that. So no more than 20 amps. Do not exceed the draw of 20 amps. This could cause the LED screen to fail and create imbalance in the battery series and void your warranty. It's evident if this has been done. We know pretty much straight away if it has been done. The other thing is never charge the battery left unsupervised. Always charge in ventilated area under supervision. So batteries, as any battery or any battery charger, if you're charging the units on a 240, which we do have the AC/DC with it, make sure that it is in a ventilated area or you're being supervised. Don't just leave it anywhere, overnight or in the bush, things being charged with under supervision. That's just not a good habit to get into. If installing into a vehicle, please ensure that the unit is well ventilated to reduce any heat buildup, and you use a correctly rated DC-DC regulated charger. And if you're using a splash jacket for the Nomad, ensure adequate ventilation. So what you'll find is some people install these into the vehicle and they make them like an oven. So what they'll do is they'll put a casing around it, whereas we have a universal stainless steel bracket that keeps it fully ventilated. So if you're going to drop it down into like a box or cabinet, make sure you drill holes all around it so they can have ventilation. And that's important so there's no moisture buildups or things like that, or overheating. So basically creating an oven environment. That's with any battery as well. You don't want to expose it to excessive heat. Charging, only charge from the red circled Anderson input or black and red unregulated poles. Do not charge from the output Anderson, which is the green area. This will damage the unit, create imbalance in series and void the warranty. So basically you've got here, it's very, very clear. In the red circled area, that's your charge area. You never charge it from the green output. Simple. You wouldn't try and charge your house from a 240, which is supplying power. That's the source. So you never try and charge these from any of the outputs. That's including the sticker sockets or the Anderson output. Always from the red, and the red Anderson is a regulated input, and the red and black poles is for an unregulated solar panel that goes to the red and black, and then it goes to an MPPT inside. So unregulated charge, the maximum unregulated charge from the red and black poles is 10 amp. To give you an idea, rule of thumb is if you've got a 200 watt panel, solar panel, which is what the poles are for, unregulated solar panel, and you connect directly to the red and black poles, make sure it's under 200 watt, and it'll be very rare that it'll get up to 10 amp anyway. Plug it into the red and black poles, unregulated, so it doesn't have a little box on it doing its thing, directly from the panel, direct cables, the red and black, it goes into the Nomad, which has an MPPT, and that will control it for 10 amp regulated charge. The maximum charge for a regulated input, which is where you plug your AC/DC charger and you plug all of your DC/DC chargers from your car, you plug them into here, because that means you're supplying a regulated source, and that's a maximum of 25 amp. So maximum 10 amp is from your unregulated, maximum solar panel size 200 watt. Don't try and pull a 300, 400 watt solar panel and plug it with red and black and assume that it will regulate it. No, it won't. You'll burn out the MPPT. It's simple. They have ratings for a reason. That's an 8 to 32 volt input, and that'll regulate it down, and 10 amp will regulate it for the charge specific for the Nomad. So that's the red and black poles to connect directly to a panel without a regulator on it. You never connect the Nomad directly to a car. Had an email just moments ago actually, the customer connecting directly to the alternator. The fact is, regulated charge, you've got to have a regulated source, which means it takes the current, regulates and puts it in. If you connect it directly to your alternator will go anywhere between 10, 15 amp up to 80 amp, and it's going to fluctuate in voltage as it charges and so on and so forth. That will damage the unit, absolutely, 100%. You've always got to have a DC-DC between the car and the Nomad, preferably a 5, 10 or 20. You obviously can't have a 25 plus DC-DC. And be aware that some of the 25 DC-DCs that are out there, which aren't ours, they will charge higher than 25. And then that will trip the unit out. And we'll cover that tripping in a moment. So do not connect directly to a vehicle under any circumstance. Also, do not directly connect it to the Sigma socket of a vehicle. Even though you might assume that it's regulated, that can pitch and trough as well, and the Nomad doesn't like it. You've always got to have some regulated between the vehicle and the Nomad. So regulated charge, the maximum regulated input is 25 amp in the red circled area. Do not exceed this rate or the unit will actually shut down and it will not charge. So what will happen, and we do get this quite commonly when people have overcharged it, borrowed someone else's DC and charged it at say 40 or so amp. That unit will now not take charge. It hasn't destroyed the unit, but what it's done, the BMS has said, I want to protect the battery because we're set up to take 25 amp max. So the little red light that it's a charge light, that'll stop coming on. You can plug anything you want into this unit now and it will not charge. And you would have seen our tutorials. If you have a look at our YouTube tutorial list, you'll see that there's an overcharge video on that. And what you need to do now is you need to draw more than 1 amp out of the unit and that will reset it and then you can charge again. So you've got to be careful because what happens if you've got a 40 amp charge on there and you have a fridge connected, that will go charge light on, charge it off, charge it on, charge it off. That's because it's resetting, booting back up, and then it's tripping out again. That's going to eventually kill that BMS because it can only protect itself for so long if you keep on trying to kill it. So do not exceed the 25 amp. If you do overcharge it, as it exceeds 25 amp, it will record that in the BMS. Draw more than 1 amp out of it. So just plug a light strip like I've got in there, and that'll be enough to trick it and trip it back in again. So there's no fuse to have to worry about, and that will protect itself there. DC-DC charges in car. If you are using your own 25 amp DC-DC, you're responsible to check and test whether the output is less than or equal to 25 amp to the Nomad, as many 25 amp DC will charge slightly higher. So if they charge at 26 amp, a number of the top end chargers will charge at 26, 26.5 amp, but they're rated 25. Yes, it will trip the unit out. So be aware of that. Charge input only. Do not charge from any of the green outputs. Ensure you charge to the red section only. Pretty straightforward. It's clearly marked. Charging from the vehicle for the car. Should you wish to charge your Nomad from the vehicle, then use a Nomad DC-DC lithium charging kit and ensure that the wiring diagram is followed. So we have Sigma DCs. We have Anderson to Anderson with a DC module kit that you can buy. You can get full kits which have all the wiring and fuses and all and so forth, but do not have a VSR. The VSR is a voltage sensitive relay, so it'll detect when your crank battery starts to drop off and the car stops, and then it'll break away the connection so it doesn't discharge your vehicle. The other thing that I will note is we've had just recently, and it's quite easy to do. This one here is a 5 amp DC set up, and it's just an Anderson, and I've just got a bit of red tape, which is my going to the Nomad, so it goes to my red charge. And what I've had recently is where a customer's had a 20 amp and they've reversed it. So what it basically is, instead of the car providing the charge to the DC and then to the Nomad and it's regulated, they reversed it. So what's happened is the unit, the Nomad, is trying to charge the car. So the car's pushing back to try and charge it out of the connection to the crank from the VSR. The Nomad, because it's been connected incorrectly, is trying to it's providing a current or to the car. Eventually drains the Nomad dead because when the car's off, this is still going to keep on providing the current to the car. It's a weird situation, but just make sure that you know what you're doing with these. It's pretty clear on the back. It tells you input and output and what goes to where. So easy enough to mark. If you're not sure, you can always contact us. So that's charging from the vehicle. Always use a DC-DC. Do not connect directly from the vehicle to the car. Do not connect to an alternator, and do not direct connect to a Sigma socket. Fridges, we're going to cover this off in depth at the end, but that's the most common issue people have is the fridges, and they still will not understand, and we try to explain to them that fridges have operating ranges. The Nomad provides a range of voltage between 12.6 fully charged to 8.8. So 12.4 to 12.7 is fully charged Nomad, and it'll drop out at 8.8 volt. Your fridge will have a voltage setting, ranges and limitations of operation which are outside our control. Please consult the fridge, read the manuals, absolutely read the manual of the fridge. There's a lot involved in the manual of the fridge. There's a lot of settings you can put on the fridge. And how long you're going to get out of the Nomad is going to depend on the settings you've got on the fridge. Is it half fridge, half freezer? What's the temperature you've got to set? What have you got in there? How many times you're going to open the door? Have you got it set on eco setting? Have you set it high, medium, low? Have you got battery protection on, off? There's a number of things you can set completely out of our control. We're providing power. That's all that we do. Solar panels in general, never connect an unregulated solar panel into the red. So you never connect that solar panel there, which is unregulated, okay, into the red, because that needs a regulated power source to go in. Unregulated always goes to red and black poles. If you plug it directly in there, the solar panel can generate 24 or 25 volt, and that can create an imbalance in the unit because you're not actually regulating the charge. So that's basically only used for regulated solar input. If you've got a regulator on that, say a Victron regulator, for an example, an MPPT controller, little lights tells you whatever chemistry you want to set it on, that's a controller. That's now regulated. It can take a 300 watt panel and make sure that no more than 25 amp. You'll probably get a 350 watt panel that's going to produce 2025, and that can plug into the red Anderson because it's now regulated. Not regulated, maximum 200 watt into the red and black. It's very, very simple. Me personally, that's my panel. It's a 200 watt panel without a regulator. I use the MPPT inside the Nomad. So that's the fridges and the solar panels general. Dead short, reset. You remove the short and the load causing the issue, turn the unit on and off again, plug into a power source, and that will trip it back up again. It'll just reset. So what will happen is typically now people buy accessories that have got different color wiring than you might red and black it. So they might have brown, blues, yellows, and all that type of thing because a lot of made in China accessories are around. If you wire them incorrectly or you're touching across, you can dead short it, take the load off, and simply just plug the charger back in a charge source, and then it'll reboot. That's where the AC/DC charge is quite handy to have. And the overcharge we just covered, which is if you put too much charge in, it'll protect itself. It won't do it forever. If you keep on hammering it and overcharging it at 40 amp, 50 amp, and then resetting it and keep on doing it and keep thinking it's going to work, you will eventually destroy the BMS. And again, we'll have to replace it. That's not covered by warranty because you've obviously abused it and not followed the instructions. So I'll talk about the fridge now and go back to general instructions, but important note regarding your fridge and Nomad PDU charging. Your fridge will have a voltage rating settings that will determine when the fridge cuts out and back in again. One of the most common issues that people have is they said, I woke up this morning, my fridge was warm. And it said it was like 11.1 volt or 11.4 volt or something like that, doesn't matter. I'll ask what the setting of the fridge is and they'll say, what's that? First issue. You can have a high setting on the fridge. Fridges like the settings maybe 12.6, they have also the 24 volt. The fridge can actually operate, typically they might cut out at 10.6. Now that doesn't mean that the fridge will just stay working at 10.6. It'll have a cutout at 10.6 but will not restart until it gets over say 11.1, 11.2 volt. That's a setting on the fridge. We don't have any control over that. So whatever your fridge setting is on, if you're setting it at the high range, that fridge might not be making the fridge cold when it gets down to 11.7. It might actually start cutting out 11.7 and won't come back into 12 volt. We don't know. There's so many brands of fridges, we don't know. But if you look at the fridging forums, it's very common for people to complain about their fridge and bag the fridge because it keeps cutting out 10.6, 10.7. That's completely normal. The responsibility is for you to keep your battery or your power in the range that's optimum for your fridge. So with the Nomads, what you can do is, as we'll explain here, so the Nomad has a voltage between 12.6 and 8.8. So if your fridge cuts out at 10.6, it's not a power source issue. It's an operational voltage of the fridge. It stops the fridge working. If you read the manual, the Nomad's simply a power supply that will cut out at 8.8. You can choose to use a Stiga DC. So one of the Stiga DCs or these Andersons here, you can use that, okay, because this takes 8 to 32 volt in. Now I could actually plug this into the Nomad, into the output, the green, okay, because that's now the source. That's providing power out. It's taken 8 to 32 volt, it's going into the DC here, and that's going to provide me on the other end 12.6 volt. I'll use a 10 amp one because that'll cover me up to 100 litre fridge, and that will provide 12.6 volt no matter what the voltage of the Nomad is. If you have a look at our tutorials again on YouTube and go to Nomad PDU and the tutorials on step-ups and fridges, it'll cover this and how to do it. It's really handy to know because the fridge might cut out at 10.6, and if you've got one of these that you're charging your Nomad with, which is typical, you can now just pull it out, and then you can pull the rest of the rest out of the Nomad, run the Nomad dead flat, get another day and a half, 2 days out of your fridge. So again, that's another tutorial. You can have a look at our Nomad PDU, look at our website. You can also get access to it there. So that's using a DC-DC step up to get around it. But please understand that it's not the power source. You've got to understand your fridge. The battery protection on the fridges was designed for the AGM, etc., where they'll want to protect the battery, because at 45%, if you keep doing that to an AGM at 50%, that's the maximum you want to take out of it. So if you've got a 100 amp hour AGM or lead acid battery, you don't want to be going past 50% because you will destroy that battery. So that's what that battery protection is for. So the lithium doesn't require that. So we don't require the battery protection because we'll run the whole thing completely flat and it'll recharge up again. It doesn't have any memory, not a problem at all. So it's not affected by the battery protection. Some fridges you can turn the battery protection off. A lot of them you can't. And some of the old really top quality fridges as well will run down to even under 9 volt. So this will run down to 8.8 and then cut out. Again, check your fridge. And me personally, what I do is I've got a 50 litre fridge, not that efficient. That 200 watt panel, even if it's not the greatest amount of sunlight out there, will still generate enough to keep my Nomad full at night. It'll be 12.5, 12.4, 12.6. The next day, my fridge is still operating perfectly. The voltage in the Nomad is about 11.8. My fridge, I know, cuts out at 10.6. So I can happily do that off-grid months on end. In fact, that's what we do. And you can quite happily run that 50 litre fridge day in, day out without having to worry about it. So that's because I know how to use my fridge, and I do know that it'll cut back in at 11.1 if it does trip out at 10.6. And I've got it on an eco setting. So again, if you check your fridge, you'll most likely find that you'll learn how to use it and make sure that your voltage is in the range that the fridge likes, or use a step up, which is quite straightforward and very handy to have. This is a recreational power distribution unit, and it's not a jump starter. Never try and jump start your vehicle from the Nomad. It's still attempted occasionally where people are trying to charge their vehicles from the Nomad. Under no circumstance do it. The chemistry is not designed for it. Nickel, magnesium, cobalt is not designed to do that. That's why it says do not use it as a jump start. The unit battery and BMS is set to provide 80% DOD, which is 80 amp hour of the 100. So it'll shut out, but you will find you get more because the lithium has recovery, and you'll get a little bit more out of it than the posted 80% before the unit shuts down. Discharge voltage is between 8.4 and 8.8, typically 8.8. Fully charged, 12.4, 12.6. It's set at 80% to support longevity of the battery. When you have batteries that run 100% DOD, you'll find that the life of the battery is less. So we put it at 80%, and then we post 600 to 800 cycles. And that's a cycle where you run it completely full, completely flat. We've run these, we've got them still in V4s and 3s that are still out to 3 and 4 years and been cycling every day for that period of time. So that's even over 1,000 cycles. Just gives you an idea. Do not use the unit if you don't read the instructions. The Nomad comes with a 12-month manufacturer's warranty under normal use. Failure to follow instruction. Here are ratings and loads. Ratings and loads are not a general. It's the load is the load. It's not approximations. Don't exceed them because you'll damage the unit, or you'll damage your accessories because you're exceeding those things. This is to protect the unit and ensure you do not void the warranty, so please read it below. If you're installing into a vehicle, make sure the unit is well ventilated to avoid excess heat and build up. We covered that before. Only ever charge from the Nomad inputs, red circled areas. Do not use the Nomad to jumpstart. We've covered that as well. This can cause swelling in the battery and significant damage. It's not designed for the purpose. It is clear as this has been done. Do not run the PDUs, which is the Nomad, in serial to 24 volt. Do not try and make these into 24 volt or joining coupled together in serial. Do not immerse in water or drill holes in them. Do not attempt to modify the product without permission of the manufacturer. Do not use fuses on any of the accessories, etc., that are higher rated than what we've put in there, because you're trying to get around and make the product push in more power. And this happens a lot in vehicles where the fuse that we'll have on a 20 amp will be 25 amp fuse. People are going to put a 30 amp fuse. If it's blowing 25 amp and this is maximum 25 amp, and you're putting a 30 or 40 in, you may as well take the fuse out and then kill the battery, because that's what you're trying to do. The fuses are there for a reason. Don't try and go around. Do not drill holes into the casing, as you may drill into the battery chemistry. This whole unit here is 11 kilograms, but it's typically full of battery. So do not drill into them. You might think that's common sense, but unfortunately people do. People drill right through the middle of it and then kill the battery and wonder why the battery doesn't work. It'll kill it, because that's now That's opened up the battery cells, the chemistry and the rest of it. That's now a throwaway product. We can't do anything with it. Do not charge with both regulated and unregulated sources at the same time, resulting in overcharging and BMS damage or imbalance to the battery. Use one or the other at any time. The one things you can use, there are products in the market like the DC-DCs that have built-in solar controller, built-in VSRs and all those types of things. So you can plug your solar panel, you can plug your car into the unit at the same time and charge the unit no more than 20 amp. So these products are out there. If you send us an email that you want something like that, yes, there are products out there and they're reasonably priced, can do the whole lot for you. But don't ever try and make your own scenario out where you can plug in a 300-400 watt panel and then another 200 watt panel and then plug the car in. And, you know, what are you using it for, how much power you draw, and then just cover that. Don't try and overkill it, because that's when you start running into problems. Read the instructions to maximize life. Do not try and use DC chargers that are designed for AGM, lead acid or gel. You know, we've got optional lithium specific DC charge. You can have a look on our website and you can see what we've got available, and they're available from the partner channel. Important again, do not charge from the green circle areas. This will damage the battery pack, overcharge, imbalance and void warranty. Ventilate the Nomad and always do it supervised. You can see on the instructions again, it also tells you where not to charge from. A little bit of a picture there. Maximum charge rates rated at 25 amp in the red, and the red and black poles is unregulated maximum of 10 amp. Accessory note, you can run your fridge and accessories while charging. Get this question a lot, can I run my fridge and charge at the same time? Absolutely. If you couldn't do that, then you wouldn't buy the product, and I wouldn't buy it either. You should be able to charge a unit while you're running all the accessories, and that's in fact exactly what it's designed for. So when you're driving the vehicle, you can charge this, no problem at all, and your fridge have running off that. That's what it's designed for. The little red light indicator on the side here, that little red light is a charge light, tells you if it's charging. But what you'll find is that people see the red light going on and off when they've got a fridge connected. The reason for that is that whatever charge rate you're putting in, there may be more going out. So the fridge might be on, the compressor might be on, and then it goes off when it gets to its thermostat. So it's drawing, not drawing. And then there might be more power going in. If there's more power going in than going out, the little red light comes on. If the red light is off, that doesn't mean it's not charging. It just means that there's more going out. So it might be, say, 5 amp going out and 4 amps coming in. It's only taxing the battery at 1 amp because there's more going out than coming in. That's all that is. And when you've got no load on it and you're charging it, the little red light will stay on until it's fully charged. And that's what the little red light indicates for. LED screens, you've got an LED screen for your voltage. It tells you what voltage is at. It's a little bit like a fuel gauge. So, you know, it'll stay on full there until it even runs down to like 12.1. It'll still stay on the full bars. And their load screen here tells you the amperage. If you're not sure about the amperage of a product like a Dremel or something that's going to draw power steadily increasing, just watch the screen. Don't exceed 20 amp. It's not hard. Look at the rating of everything. Look at the rating of your fridge. You'll find that a 50-litre fridge won't draw, at max might draw 5.5, 6 1/4 amp. When it starts up, it'll drop back down to 3 or 4 amp. What you're going to do is look at that, keep it under 20, and you'll find each of this, the Sicker sockets are rated 10 amp, and the Anderson output, which is the green, is rated 20 amp. So that's what the screens are for there. Again, don't exceed the spec, and you'll be fine. The 8 amp AC/DC charger can be used with a suitable inverter. So the 8 amp AC/DC chargers that come with the unit, you plug in 240 and charge the unit. You can charge the unit by using an inverter. So some people use their pocket inverter in their car. They may have a 300 or 600 watt inverter. Absolutely, yes, you can plug that inverter to your vehicle and then plug the 240 AC/DC charger into that, and you can charge that. But preferably you run a DC/DC if you're going to charge it in the vehicle. The input of the red and black poles, again, we went through, that's for the unregulated panel. This has a built-in MPPT controller, maximum 10 amp, 8 to 32 volt, it'll accept. So it'll take a 24 volt solar panel that's putting out 24 volt, that's no problem. It'll convert it to 12.6 and also no more than 10 amp. So under 200 watt panel, unregulated, is typically fine with the unit. Dual ESB ports, etc. And that's the regulated, unregulated, and then your DC-DC. They've got the 2.1 jacks over here, typically used for audio or used for CCTV. So you can use these if you've got a CCTV set up in an off-grid system. You can run these, they'll take up to 5 amp each. Now, going back to the general charging of the Nomad General Solar, it harps on about the 25 amp and the unregulated. Do not plug an unregulated solar panel again into the red Anderson. The panel must have its own regulator to input into the red. Again, we do harp on about that because people will give us a call and say the Nomad's got 19 volt and things on it. I can tell you straight away what that is. You've plugged an unregulated solar panel that can charge at 24 volt. You've gone directly into the red, okay, without a regulator. Now, it'll handle it for a fair period, but it's not designed to do that, and yes, you will damage the unit if you do that. So it simply, does it have a regulator? Yes, maximum 25 amp. Plug it into the red. From there, we've talked about do not connect directly to a car alternator, and do not connect directly to a Sega socket. The inverter we've covered off. You can use the simple inverter to plug your 240 charger into. They're quite handy to have, because if you trip out the unit because you've done a dead short, so you've crossed the red and black or whatever, just deaded it out, you can just take the load off, reset it by plugging the charger in there. Again, it covers off the bottom here, never charge the battery unsupervised, always in a charge in a wall vented area. And then going back to the fridges again, it's important to understand that if you put a fridge in a car and you're up north and it's 45 degrees outside, you can guarantee it's 50 plus inside the car, and you're running it at minus 15, and you say to us, we're only getting 1 day out of it, let's talk about math. The simple thing is, if your fridge is drawing at minus 15 and it's a 90 litre fridge, I can tell you from experience, that 90 litre fridge at minus 15 and that degree of ambient, it's going to be drawing at least 4 to 5 amp an hour hard. It's going to continue to do that to keep maintaining its cool. If you're drawing 4 or 5 amp per hour and you've got 80 available amp hour, 4 to 5 into 80 is how much? Now, I'm not a mathematician, but if I was to say it's 4 amp an hour and I ran it for 20 hours, this Nomad's going to be dead. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the Nomad and there's nothing wrong with the fridge. The fact is, that's what it's drawing. If you're going to go to the AGM or lead acid or gel, you're going to have to get the same out of it. You're going to have to run at least 100 plus kilo of batteries, because you're going to run down to 50%. You're still going to have the same issue where it's drawing down to 50%. So 200 amp hour worth of AGM at 50% is 100. So you can only still have, let's say, 4 amp an hour, that's 25. So you're going to last 1 day and an hour. That's all that's going to happen. So you understanding how your fridge works is absolutely paramount. It's the number one question we get. It's the question we get every single day. It's the same question we'll get day in, day out. You'll see it on every forum across the internet where people are complaining about the fridge. And 99.9% of the time, it's not. It's understanding how your fridge works, what is its optimum range for its voltage, and making sure that the power source that's supplying that fridge is kept in the range that it likes. And understanding when does it cut off and when does it cut back in. It's also worthwhile putting a jacket on the fridge to try and keep it cooler as well, especially when you're up north and you're in those really, really hot areas, and the humidity and all those types of things, they do affect the fridge, and they'll affect the way that it works. So look, the instructions we got here covers everything you really need to know about how to use the Nomad. And it's very clear everything you're marking on here, but if you follow the instructions, you're not going to have a problem. But if you try and do the charge at your own way, or you don't follow the instructions, exceed all the loads, exceed the charging rates, on reverse things that you shouldn't do, that's when you run into problems. And it's quite clear, because the BMS is quite smart. It can record historically what's happened to it, and we know what particularly has been done to it. So again, that's the instructions. If you haven't got them, and again, where people run into issues, they've had the unit for 2 or 3 years, and then they run into a problem. The reason being is you don't use it for 6 months, then you pull it out, you start using it, you forgot the instructions. Where are they? They're online, nomadpdu.com.au. Download them, just make them available. If you're going to borrow these to your friends, make sure you give them instructions. If you don't have instructions, you're going to borrow it to your friend, don't expect it's going to come back working properly. That's where people run into issues. The person you give it to might be used to using AGM, lead acid and gel, big batteries, and be running 35 different spotties out there and just draw the hell out of whatever it is he's doing. You're going to run into problems. You need to look at the instructions and follow the loads, the maximum, the limitations, and then you won't have a problem. So again, I know it's a bit long-winded, but I think it was important that we just cover as much as we could of instructions off. There's a little bit more, but it goes over that sort of same scenario again as we can and can't do, regular, unregulated, charging, how not to charge, and we do have a number of tutorials that are specific to each thing, especially the fridge and step-up. So you can just type that into YouTube, Nomad PDU, charging your Nomad, or sorry, running your fridge from Nomad, stepping up, or using step-up. And then if you've got any other questions, again, contact at nomadpdu.com.au. Have a look at the website. You can look at the instructions that are online there. You can download the PDFs. And then there's also links to our tutorials specific to different areas of the Nomad, what you might be specifically looking for. Also out of the box, is the Nomad right for you? It's not right for every scenario. We get that every day where people are asking questions, and we prefer that you don't buy the unit assuming that it's going to do what you want. We'd rather not sell the unit at all, and you get the right solution. We'd rather you go and buy a different lithium solution, have your own BMS, and set yourself up if you're going to try and run some high-end, induction ovens and microwaves and compressors and plasmas and all that. Then this is not the product for yourself. Again, look at our out-of-box review, and then you'll find out whether it's for you. So, thanks for joining us again. Talk again soon. nomadpdu.com.au.